Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of The Path of Maximum Resistance, which is the story of my life. I think today's episode might be a little bit shorter, but hopefully, in saying that it's shorter, doesn't connote that it's any less important than any other episode I've done so far. In fact, I would say that the episode I'm about to do, the topic I want to discuss, is probably the most important of the ones I've done so far. And in fact, as I think about it, this might be the most important message that I put out amongst anything I could say. So, don't let the duration of the video, though knowing me, it might end up going for hours for all I know. But as I foresee it, I don't predict this to be a super long video. But it does have significance and importance to me. And so I really appreciate in advance and want to thank you in advance for watching it. So here we go. And I should say, I was kind of thinking about this, and maybe the joke is played out now because I've kind of buried the lead here. But I know for some of you, you might be kind of thankful that this one won't be quite as long of a video, as some of them have gotten pretty lengthy. I think that last one was like 50 minutes long. But hopefully they're enjoyable. Hopefully you're making them through the whole thing and breaking them up into bits if you have to. Not that I get anything from this, but one thing that I don't have cable television. I'm a cord cutter. I don't subscribe to a lot of things. I'm pretty frugal when it comes to my money, but I'm telling you all that because one thing I do suggest, I really enjoy YouTube Red. It's one subscription I do have. And the big benefit is it allows you to turn off your screen when you're watching YouTube videos. So like if you're listening to music, you don't have to have, if you don't subscribe to YouTube Red, or at least it was the case back in the day, I've been a subscriber for a long time, when your screen turns off, like on your phone, the music goes away or the video stops. With YouTube Red, that doesn't happen. I think it's like $5 a month or something. I think that's well worth it. So it's one thing I would sort of recommend if you're into that, or it makes listening to podcasts, until I get like just an audio stream of this thing, like it would make it a lot easier to listen to. But in any case, so getting to today's message, if I could speak. As you can probably tell, I don't really have a whole lot of hesitation about sharing my, not so much insecurities, because I don't feel like I have a ton of those, but just like my troubles or any issues I've experienced. I don't really have a whole lot of trepidation, or like I said, hesitation about expressing those. Though I do have one issue, and that's sort of the topic for today. And that's that in a sense, I don't always feel justified in the feelings that I have. And let me sort of elaborate on that. So, as most things do, this will draw us back to my military experience. And if you recall from last episode, I spoke a lot about the things I did with the 1st of the 503rd in Ramadi. And one thing that perhaps didn't get expressed, and kind of goes hand in hand with what I want to talk about today, is what happened to that unit when we got back to the States. As I kind of mentioned, our unit was from South Korea. We deployed from South Korea to Ramadi, Iraq. And then instead of redeploying after our tour was over, instead of going back to South Korea, we actually went to Fort Carson, Colorado. At that time, my contract with the Army was up. I'd actually been stop loss. I had been in the Army longer than my contract duration was actually supposed to last. So ultimately, I ended up getting out of the Army. That unit, the 1st of the 503rd, was actually reflagged and reorganized and became 1-9 Infantry. And here's the crazy part. Not long after we got home, and this is a couple months after I had already gotten out and had long left the military, the Army sent 1-9 Infantry, that same exact unit, sent them back to Iraq. And not just back to Iraq, they sent them back to Ramadi, to the same austere, sort of hell on earth situation that we had just sort of escaped from. And I tell you this because when I think about my own issues and the things that I deal with, and I put it into the context of those people, my friends who say re-enlisted and then went back to Ramadi, I sometimes feel like, man, those dudes are making it through. Like, those are true warriors, right? Those dudes I admire a lot, like more than they ever know. And hopefully with this video, they might understand that. But it makes me wonder about the things that I deal with. Like, I did 2 tours of Iraq. There's people who have done multiple tours of Iraq, and then they went to Afghanistan, where combat was probably way worse than anything I can imagine. And some of those people are fine. I know we all deal with our own issues in our own ways, so it's not that. I'm not trying to say that I shouldn't be experiencing the things that I do, because you can't help it. It's just the way our disposition is, right? Each of us is different. My point in being is that if my videos ever, or even my conversations or anything I've written or anything like that ever comes across as sort of whiny or whatever, I guess in a sense I don't care. But on the other hand, I want to acknowledge that I do realize that, like, my experience isn't like the end all be all. You know what I mean? Like, people have gone through so much worse. And going even further, you can expound on that and take it to an even crazier level. Like, I mean, we think there's people in the military who have it really bad. Think about the people like the Iraqis. Think about these kids who are born into Ramadi, Iraq, right? Like, I almost feel like I have no footing to complain. Like, here I am. I live in California. I have my beautiful little dog. She's laying over there licking on her toe right now, but she's awesome. I have the California Pacific Coast Highway behind me. Like, I have my issues, but I have it pretty good. You know what I'm saying? If you're a kid born into Ramadi, Iraq, or say like Homs in Syria, or Sudan, or something like that, man, we all have one life to live. Like, one. You know, like, and it's easy to say that and think of it as nothing and just kind of say it in passing, but if you really dwell on what it means to have like one life to live, and your life ends up being, you know, the roll of the dice ends up putting you in Ramadi, Iraq, it's hard for me. Well, clearly it's not too hard because I'm doing it, but it puts a different spin on the context of my feelings, knowing how good I generally have it. So I want to acknowledge that. I just want to, it's really important to me. It's really important to me that you all know that, like, I'm not wallowing in my own self-pity when I talk about some of the things that I go through. I share, like, the episodes I've dealt with, like with depression, alcoholism. I share them because it makes me feel better, and I also share them because I hope other people who are dealing with the same, who have gone through more strenuous things than I have, might find someone that they relate to. But it's in the grand context of knowing that, you know, people have it much, much worse. So we go back to the soldiers in the 503rd, which became 19 Infantry. I guess part of this is just to give a shout out to them and everyone else who stayed in. Those are true, like, for real, like, warriors, man. And, like, so if anything I say sort of conjures up pity or sympathy and you sort of feel compelled to help someone out or do something, like, find them. Like, find, you know, go to Bethesda in Maryland, or find like a Wounded Warriors organization, do some research on it, make sure it's an organization where the money's actually going to the soldiers, and like take care of them. Or, dude, like, join the Peace Corps. I don't know, like, there's significant things you can do. So I guess my point being is I hope my messages conjure up pity and sympathy and a greater sense of empathy for the rest of the world, but not for me specifically. Because again, like, what I deal with, I can fight through. People have it much, much worse. So it's really, really, really important for me to sort of get that across. And I've thought about it. There might be an episode I do where I just talk about like the psychology of PTSD. Not that I know anything about it in any academic sense. It would all be like bro science, armchair quackery. But I do have a sense that, like, being in the military itself, going to Iraq, going into Ramadi, isn't like a one-for-one sort of causal effect. Like, you don't go there and automatically you come out with PTSD. I've actually read somewhere in passing, not that I was doing any research on it or anything, I just remember reading this, so I'm not sure, I guess I'd tell you that because I'm not sure the validity of it. But I do remember reading somewhere, and it makes sense to me, that one of the reasons that many soldiers end up with PTSD is actually because they enter the military with mental, not issues, but there's sort of latent conditions there that are just get exposed and exaggerated by their military experience. Which, if you think about it, kind of makes sense, because most normal sort of conditioned people don't voluntarily join an organization whose goal is to take the lives of other people. And if you do join it, and obviously people join for a myriad of reasons. It might be patriotism, it might be nationalism, or whatever the case might be. You might be compelled to serve because you feel like you're doing it for your family, or it's something that comes from your lineage and your parents have done it, and which is great. But especially if you join like the infantry or any like combat arms unit, that's not like, there's usually something going on that makes you seek out that sort of lifestyle. And so, and that sounds like I'm saying something disparaging about us as combat soldiers, but I'm not, because when you're actually a combat soldier, you're proud of that. Like, you're proud of the fact that you're different. Like, we're a warrior class or whatever. But at the same time, when you get out of the military, I do think that that same stuff that was going on prior to you joining sort of gets exposed and doesn't lend itself to putting you on the right foot to be successful when you get out. Because you're used to being like a super self-sufficient, sort of gung-ho, stress-seeking person, and when you get out to the regular world and it's something different, it's sort of a mind shock for people. So I do think that a lot of the people who joined the military, they had something going on, and plus maybe their upbringing. A lot of times, you don't have a whole lot of 1%ers who are joining the military. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like Donald Trump's kids aren't joining the army. It's a lot of times it's people coming from single parent households or just broken situations. I came from a really small town in North Dakota. My parents worked super hard. My dad was Dickey's Worker of the Year in North Dakota, but we didn't have a ton of money, stuff like that. And so I think that sort of conditions you. You know what I'm saying? Donald Trump's kids had the luxuries in life to be suited for success, whereas people who join the military might not have that same luxury, I guess you could say. Anyway, I guess my whole point in sharing that is just to kind of acknowledge everything, and it goes further, right? Like, I want to put out all these things because I want you to know about me. I want to tell my story, but I want to tell it in the fullest context as possible. And it's not always pretty. And in telling you that it's not always pretty, I think we should acknowledge the people who've done it better. And so, I'll tell you the stories about how I went to Special Forces Assessment and Selection, how hard I worked, and how it was so disappointing and how it really broke me that I quit. But I can only tell you that if you understand that there's people who didn't quit. And they're friends of mine, and they're buddies that I served with in regular units who then went to Special Forces Assessment and Selection. I have a friend who went twice, didn't make it the first time, made it the second time, went on, had a Special Forces career. He's now out of the military. He's doing his thing. Those are the people who really need credit. That's not what I'm seeking. I'm trying to tell a story. I'm doing this sort of selfishly, but I want to take this whole entire episode and just acknowledge them. Because, man, I quit. People... So there's better people than me. You know what I'm saying? There's people who could tolerate the stuff that I couldn't, and they're still serving, and they knew. Let's even go all the way back. When I joined the Army, and and to kind of to fill this story out a little bit, let's talk about how I kind of joined the Army. And I'm not going to go into like the depths of it because that would be an episode in and of itself. But the interesting part is I actually wanted to be in the Navy. I just, like, growing up when I was in Pennsylvania, I used to have these, like, one weekend a month, like a typical, like, son of a, divorced family. I used to go visit my biological dad once a month, and he actually had a boat, like a bayliner, on the Delaware River, and that's what we would do on the weekends I would visit. We would go on the boat, and we'd go out in the Delaware River, and, like, for some reason, it just fascinated me. Something about being on the water has always just been... It's just something that, like, it feels right to me, if that makes sense. So I really wanted to join the Navy. I knew I wanted to be in the military. I sought adventure a lot, and plus I was one of those kids when I was in high school who wanted to grow up. Like I hated being a kid. Like I wanted responsibility. I was just one of those types. I think you've probably met people like that, and that was certainly me. So my goal was to get into the Navy. I'm not sure a lot of people know that, but that's 100% true. The only reason I actually joined the Army, well, there's two reasons. I used to read these books by a guy named Gary Linderer. I think it's Linderer. He used to tell stories about Vietnam. He was not sure if he was a Ranger. I think he was Ranger Tab. I know he was in the 101st. He was a LRP, Long Range Reconnaissance and Patrol. And his books fascinated me. I've actually come to read people more recently who actually kind of discredit some of his stories. But whatever, they were effective to me, and they gave me a sense of wanderlust big time. Like, I used to have a crazy fascination with Vietnam. Like, I used to feel, and this sounds crazy, but I used to feel like I was a lost soul who, like, maybe was reincarnated, like I had served in Vietnam. Like, I really wanted to go, like, I wanted that experience. I would read the Gary Linderer books, and I would just get filled with, like, I wanted to do that. And I would listen to that music. In fact, when I was at basic training, we were doing a ruck march, and this will always stick in my head. We were doing a ruck march, and I remember, like, the way I made it through this ruck march is I kept playing the song Paint It Black by the Rolling Stones in my head over and over. Like, and I would literally, like, put myself into, like, Vietnam, like, I would put myself into that environment, at least mentally. As crazy as that is. So when I talk about, like, mental craziness, well, there you go. So the reason I ended up in the Army, like I said, I really was in a rush to grow up. And to be honest with you, I don't even know where I was going with all this story, but maybe if I keep elaborating, I'll get to where I want to go. So I was kind of compelled by those stories, and then I was actually a junior in high school, and, like, I really wanted to get into the military. And I ended up joining the Army because it was the only unit, or the only branch of the military that would accept juniors in high school. So what you would do is you would actually go to basic training during your junior summer, and then come back. You were a reservist or like a National Guardist, but I was in the reserves. You'd come back and you'd serve out you'd like do your one weekend a month in the National Guard or in the reserves during your senior year of high school, and then once you graduated, you go to your technical school, AIT, and then you'd be a reservist after that. Ultimately, as it worked out for me, I kept getting in trouble in high school. I actually skipped all my drills when I was a senior in high school, which became a repetitive thing, and that's actually why I wanted to talk about this. I would skip my drills. I was just an awful soldier. I made it through basic training, and eventually I graduated high school, and like I think I mentioned in an earlier episode, I graduated early because I was a mess, and my recruiter worked it out with my school board, and they let me graduate early, and I actually switched and went active duty. Part of the point of me telling you all of that is that I joined the reserves before 9/11 happened. I actually went to basic training, and then during my senior year of high school, 9/11 happened. So, when I talk about the context of all of this, and when I was alluding to kind of standing on the shoulders of giants, like, there's people who saw 9/11 happen and ran to the recruiting station. You know what I'm saying? Like, that wasn't me. Like, I was in the military, and then 9/11 happened, and then, like, I got sent, but it wasn't the other way around. Like, I wasn't one of those people who saw 9/11 and then was compelled to join. So I have a lot of respect for people whose story went the other way, who saw it happen and then went and joined. So I think those people need to be acknowledged. And I need to just sort of, again, put my story in the context of theirs. It's super important to me. And on top of that, like I kind of mentioned, like I wasn't, like I was a good soldier. Like I got promoted quickly. I was good at PT, physical training. Like I loved to work out, I loved to run, so I always excelled at that. I usually got like the maximum score on my physical fitness test. And like I was whatever, but like I wasn't responsible, man. Like there are people who take soldiering very seriously, and they're really important, and they're the backbone of the military. And by being the backbone of the military, they're like the backbone of the United States. Like they're the people we need, and that wasn't me. Like I basically made it through my military existence by the skin of my teeth. You know what I'm saying? Like I made it through because the Army forced me to make it through. I tried everything I could to get kicked out. I went AWOL, like I told you. I've gone AWOL. I went AWOL twice. Like, it's crazy. It's insane. Like, when I was in high school, I didn't go to my drills. Like, I was just not a good soldier. I was getting in trouble when I got back to Fort Stewart. Like, I did a lot of things. So I guess I don't tell you, like, oh, it's cool. Like, getting in trouble is cool, because it's not. I'm regretful. I'm telling you that because there are people who take duty seriously, and they take everything they've done, they take their responsibility, they take it as an honor, and I didn't. I was more of a brat about it. And that's also something really important to acknowledge, is that my whole outlook about serving the military, as I've gotten older, I've reflected on it, and I feel like it's totally wrong. I've always thought about the military, of what the military could be for me, especially in the context of becoming Special Forces qualified, because that was something I needed for myself. And when I failed it, that's why it broke me so significantly, is because I built my entire character on achieving that goal. But the military shouldn't be about that at all. Like, it's good to have goals, and that'll help you achieve success in the military. But looking back, that was the worst. It's almost an embarrassing perspective to have when you serve. Like, it should be an honor. Like, honestly, it should be an honor to be in the military. It should be an honor to know that you're serving the United States. And I know it sounds like there's some people who hear this and be like, that sounds cheesy or whatever, or corny, but it's really not. Like, you're putting your life on the line for the defense of the country, for other people, so they don't have to worry about it. Like, to have the perspective of what can I get out of the military instead of what can I give to the military is really backwards. And I had it backwards the entire time. And I think because I did, that's what allowed me to sort of go about it so frivolously and do so many things that I now sort of regret. And that's something, like, I do these vlogs and I share it so openly because I dwell on that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's in me. I know that, like, I went AWOL. I know that, like, I quit during Special Forces assessment and selection. I'm proud of my service. I'm proud of the 2 tours I did in Iraq. I'm proud of, like, becoming a sergeant. I'm proud of all those things. But in the grand scheme of things, one of the lingering feelings, like, if the whole of my military memory 100% is, like, you know, this 100% bubble, like 70% of it honestly is disappointment, mostly with not making it SF, but then just the way I treated the military. Like, it just wasn't right. That's not the I should have been professional about it. And I know, like, you're young or whatever, but the point being is that there's people who do treat it that way, and those are the people who need to be honored. And then on top of that, to take it to its fullest extent, it's a legitimately, like, literally deathly serious occupation. Like, we lost dudes. And when you're doing something that important, where people who you care about, people who are sacrificing, legitimately, seriously sacrificing their lives, like, you would think that would be the wake-up call you need to sort of take it seriously and treat it with the deference and respect that it deserves. And I just feel like I never really did. And so part of doing these vlogs, again, is sort of expressing that. But again, it's not to express it in the sense that I want you guys to be like, oh, Steve like found his way, he's a good person, like whatever. It's to part of that, obviously, like yeah, like I want to feel good. I want you guys to feel good about me, but really, I want to be able to tell my stories, and when you hear those stories, you'll be able to take a step back and go, okay, I get his story, but let's think about the big picture, and let's think about the people who didn't mess up. Let's think about the people who are doing it the right way, and let's take the time to acknowledge them, because that's really important. And now, I've kind of mentioned all of this in the context of the military, and that just like doesn't even do it justice, because like I talk about, depression and having PTSD. And again, it's sometimes you have to put your life into a perspective. You have to sort of be able to scope it all out. I mean, I was on Facebook last night, as I sometimes do. I just get lost in social media. Like, I think a lot of people my age, like, hey, I'm going to go to bed. Oh, and I'll spend 2 hours on Facebook. Stupid. But as it was last night, I saw that, I don't want to say a friend, but an acquaintance I had in my fraternity. I don't want to get too far into it because it's pretty personal, but he's having like a really big health issue, like significant not life changing, but life threatening. And as you go through his Facebook, you can see how much his family cares and how much his friends care. And he did nothing to deserve that. And I was never great friends with this dude. Like, it's not whatever for me. But my point in sharing it is that like a lot of the problems that I've had, I've sort of solicited on my own. Like, though I do truly 100% believe that alcoholism is a condition, and it's a condition like cancer, in some sense there's not a whole lot you can do about it. On the other hand, there's a lot of irresponsible things that I've done, and a lot of things that I've, like, let's put it this way, like the name of this vlog is The Path of Maximum Resistance. And though it wasn't always by choice that I chose the more difficult of paths towards whatever I've wanted to do, a lot of times I could have taken the more typical path and not had the issues that I'm experiencing, or I have experienced. And there's some people who just don't have that choice. So when I think of my fraternity friend who is now going through these health problems, these health scares, who did nothing, who was probably making great choices, who was doing the right thing, and then they have that issue, and then I think about the things that I'm expressing, it really kind of makes you have to sit down and go, really? Really? And so, again, like, it's real. The things I talk about, they're genuine, they're real, and they're things I really have to deal with, but at the same time, I hope I'm able to put them into a perspective that at least lets everyone understand that, again, I don't think that my situation is like whatever, as bad as it can get. Cause it's not. It's there's so much more out there. So that's really kind of like what I wanted to talk about. I really wanted to acknowledge, I felt like as I was kind of running this morning, I had a lot more kind of going on. I really wanted to get out there. But the big part was it means the world to me to really talk about, especially my friends in the 1st, the 503rd who re-enlisted and went back to Ramadi, because that's craziness, and I don't think those dudes know it. Like, and some of them are still in. Like, some of them are still serving. I don't think... Like, they'll probably see this and they'll laugh and they'll be like, that's cheesy, that's stupid, like, whatever. But I'm telling you, I can see it now. Like, when we're, like, 60 years old or whatever, and we're looking back and we're, like, the old-timers talking about our experience, we'll really admire the sacrifice that those guys made. And I feel it now. Like, I already look at them, and those dudes are straight-up heroes. Like, I can talk about politics and everything else and how we've changed, but I don't want any of that to erase the admiration that I have for them. And, like, it doesn't get any more sincere and genuine and honest than what I'm saying right now. Like, those dudes, like, whether you agree with their mission, whether you agree with the reasons that they're doing it, just their willingness to sacrifice on our behalf especially knowing what they're getting themselves into, because I'm telling you, none of us were happy in Ramadi. I need that. Like, I'm gonna have an episode. I'm gonna have many episodes where I just sort of convey the bleakness of what that place was like. And those dudes like went back. Like, they really went back there, and they did again. And I just really hope that they know that like we appreciate them, and that they're superheroes, and that like it's a big deal to me. So that's sort of it. I'm trying to think. I'm like, before I close this one out, I'm trying to go through my head and just think of, was there anything else really important for me to get to? Can't really think of anything off the top of my head. But again, this one was kind of quicker. Just wanted to get it out there. Just wanted to sort of acknowledge the broader sort of perspective of what's going on here. So when I continue telling these stories, I won't have the weight of like I'm telling them as if like my story is like not the penultimate, it's the wrong word, but like my story is the, you know, the real superior, like I have it so bad, and I just don't. So hopefully this episode here gives some context to everything else that comes out, and hopefully at some point I'll start telling less military stories, more happy stories, more cool stories. Hopefully some about North Dakota. I have some worked up in my head. I think you guys, people who didn't grow up in small town North Dakota, would be really sort of fascinated by what it's like growing up there. And I can tell you real quick, just to kind of maybe tease that one a little bit. I think about it all the time. When I'm out here in California, like I'll go down to really like luxurious, like what I think are really luxurious, like costly, expensive, cool places, like down in Orange County. Like I'll go into Laguna, and Laguna High School is like, it's like literally built into Laguna Hills. It's like in Laguna, the actual city, but like it overlooks the ocean, and like it's really like, it's like, they might not think so because they go there every day, but to me it's like the most beautiful place. And I imagine going to high school there relative to going to my high school in Petersburg, North Dakota, where we had a graduating class of like 42 kids, and that was like one of 2 school districts in the entire county. And I can't even sort of reconcile what the like imagine going from Laguna and get put into North Dakota, or going from North Dakota and getting put into Laguna High School. It's almost like 2 different worlds. It's like not even like 2 different states. It's like 2 different countries, 2 different paradigms. It's crazy. So if you've never experienced what that's like in North Dakota, or small town living, that'll be a fun episode. So that's just one thing to look forward to, amongst many other things. So I thank you for watching this one. I hope you might be compelled to subscribe to the channel. And again, I'm working on a website. I'll have it up, and several other things to support this. And please share this if you find it fulfilling. Share it with anyone, and reach out to me if you want. And other than that, I thank you for watching. Later.